Welcome back to The Pulse. National Security Minister Albert Dapaah is alleging that some persons may have given a different interpretation to the recent controversial comments made by President Akufo-Addo on the presence of the Wagner mercenary group near Ghana's northern borders. Of course, what we do know is that at the just ended U.S.-Africa summit, the president told U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken that Burkina Faso was paying Russian mercenaries with a gold concession very close to Ghanaian territory. Let's listen to the president make the comments again.
Partnerships.
Today, Russian mercenaries are on our northern border. Burkina Faso has now entered into an arrangement to go along with Mali in employing the Wagner forces there. I believe a mine in southern Burkina has been allocated to them as a form of payment for their services. Prime Minister of Burkina Faso in the last 10 days has been in Moscow. And to have them operating on our northern border is particularly distressing for us in Ghana.
President Akufo-Addo there. What we do know is that the Burkina Faso government has refuted the allegations. Ghana's neighboring country further recalled its ambassador to Ghana, signaling a possible diplomatic row between the two nations. In the last 48 hours, Ghana's National Security Minister, Albert Dapaah, led a high-powered delegation to try as much as possible to de-escalate tension. Amongst many other items on the agenda, Albert Dapaah told the media that he held discussions with the Burkina Faso leaders on how some people gave different interpretation to the comments made by the president.
We have reviewed the very, very strong cooperation between our two countries. And we have clarified to our mutual satisfaction recent reported discussions between Ghana and the United States with regard to the needed partnerships for sustainable peace in the region. During the discussions, we have reaffirmed our support, both Ghana and Burkina Faso, for our common fight against terrorism, welcoming also the early operationalization of the Accra Initiative to enable Burkina Faso defeat the terrorists who have brought untold hardship and pain to the Burkina Faso people. We have discussed that concrete support from Ghana is necessary, and that Ghana will continue to advocate for Burkina Faso in the Accra Initiative and also in ECOWAS. And we have agreed that Ghana will call on West African states to act expeditiously on this matter facing Burkina Faso. We have also highlighted the importance of building resilience in vulnerable communities and support for those that have been displaced or lost livelihoods, and called for genuine partnership with the international community in this regard. We have expressed the need for our two countries to hold more regular consultations, and this we pledge to do with immediate effect. We are most grateful for the frank discussions. We are most grateful that we've been able to chart a new path going forward, and we look forward to ensuring that we will be able to go ahead with the decisions that we have arrived at, and that Ghana and other West African countries, especially the Accra Initiative countries, will continue to recognize that victory for Burkina Faso will be victory for all the other Accra Initiative countries. We must do this together, and we pledge to do that.
Well, except of what is that the National Security Minister indicated there in Burkina Faso. I want to bring in now Emmanuel Bombande, conflict resolution expert. He is also one-time former Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, joining us via Zoom. Thank you so much, sir, for spending some time with us here on The Pulse. Later on, we'll hear from James Agaga, who's ranking on Parliament's Defence and Interior Committee. But let's start off with you, Mr. Bombande. You've heard the comments by the president, and now we're leading a delegation to try and de-escalate the situation. What's the best option now for us as a nation in trying to get results fast?
Thank you for inviting me, and good afternoon to all your viewers and listeners. This, in the first place, is what we should have done. In other words, we must at all times appreciate that we have set for ourselves a foreign policy framework, or if you would call it a foreign policy guide as Ghana, that is anchored on the cultivation and development or nurturing of good neighborliness. But that guide is informed by the fact that we would always, once in a while, have problems that we need to deal with in our neighborhood and with our neighbors. And so we set that foreign policy guide to be the framework that informs how we engage with our neighbors. And that engagement is political. And to that extent, therefore, how we nurture such good neighborliness would have been to inform the transitional government of Burkina Faso that we are hearing intelligence reports that near our border, you have accepted to place mercenaries, the Wagner military or private army. And we in Ghana do not accept that, and it will be unacceptable. It will be a difficult conversation, but we do it first with the neighbor that we perceive or we consider to be behaving in a way that threatens our interests. Why is this important? Because there is no partnership in this world we can develop to respond to our problems and challenges more than the ones we do in our neighborhoods. Where you live in your neighborhood, if there is a problem and you cannot deal with it with your neighbors, you cannot go and bring people from another community to come and solve your problem. So that's what we should have done. In other words, I'm not saying that if we have good intelligence that there is such a threat, we should not raise it. What I'm saying is we raise it first with the neighbor where the threat is located. And what that means is we leverage to the maximum our own multilateral efforts. And those efforts are the Accra Initiative, they are the ECOWAS framework, they are the African Union. When we do this, it stands to good reason that should other friends elsewhere be interested, we can expand the conversation, but always keeping in mind that we are the ones taking our destiny into our own hands in our neighborhood and responding to our own challenges. That is how it should be done, but it is not too late that we are repairing the damage now, and I'm happy that the conversations are leading to something meaningful. And we should be learning from this.
Right. I want to pick up on this, the possibility of misconstruing the president or otherwise. It's part of the communique that we're getting from the National Security Minister, indicating that discussions have been held on how they believe on the Ghanaian side that the president may have been misrepresented by possibly the media or other actors in whose interest these comments may favor. Do you feel, after listening to the president, that indeed he has been misrepresented on the comments he made about the Wagner Group?
the issue is not about misrepresentation, because the president's meeting with Secretary of State Antony Blinken was viral. It was heard all over the world. It was not about the words. It was not about the president's meeting or communication with the Secretary of State. It is the deeper meaning that such communication sought to bring out. That we went to a superpower to complain about a problem that we should handle because we have it in our hand. That is the problem. Let us not dance around it. The president should not have engaged the United States without first engaging with Burkina Faso. That is my point. Because when you do that, you carry across to the world that we have a lack of self-belief and confidence. Keep in mind that our current president is very good at communicating to the world our sense of independence, our sense of our dignity, and carrying ourselves in a way that makes us to have the confidence that we can solve our own problems. Then you have a difficulty with your neighbor, and you want to communicate that difficulty to a superpower without discussing it first with your neighbor. It is awkward. It does not sit well. That for me is the issue. It's not about the words in the communication, my good brother.
In dealing or foiling the threats of the Wagner group, what other options are available to a Ghanaian head of state aside dealing with the Western powers? I mean, some say that we throw away positive neutrality, non-alignment in the face of what's pragmatic and what's facing us as a country. We don't want to sit down for the threats to, infiltrate our borders before we begin to act.
To start with, it is a misnomer. It is misconceived. It is out of place to imagine that Western powers would be the ones who would deal with terrorism in our neighborhoods. It does not matter what partnership and support. How we deal with terrorism is our capacity to cooperate as a people of the region, which carries all the population of West Africa, to halt radicalization, prevent violent extremism, and therefore prevent terrorism. Because the people are united against the acts of terrorism. That is how you respond. The misconceived priority is that you can deal with it militarily, and that is wrong. It's an asymmetric warfare in which the enemy is within. And the way to deal with that enemy is to confront that enemy from within. Now, I said we should leverage our own multilateral efforts. The Accra Initiative seeks to build trust and confidence amongst ourselves, first by facilitating and enhancing communication. The rest of it now becomes complementary. So I agree that when we come together and we put boots on the ground to fight the terrorists, we do so in solidarity, following the capacity of the people to work together. You don't put the cart before the horse. That is why elsewhere in this world, when armies were sent on the ground to fight terrorists, those armies withdrew in defeat. We should learn. Don't repeat the mistakes powerful nations did, which did not succeed in fighting the war on terrorism. Now, my good brother, let me add this element. There is such a deep respect for Ghana in our neighborhood. The people of Burkina Faso highly regard Ghana, and they will respect Ghana for the leadership that we exhibit. It is for this reason that the transitional government willingly and warmly welcomed our Honorable Minister Dapaah, Minister for National Security. Under other circumstances, they would have closed their door. So we should read into the deeper meanings. And the president should be well advised. I'm saying this in all sincerity. If I were sitting with President Mahama when I was Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, I would have urged him, don't even call, fly to Ouagadougou and engage the transitional government.
And that's why many have raised questions about the feasibility of a democratically elected president engaging a military transitional government. We're not even sure if they'll give power back to the people as they've pledged to do.
No, we've crossed that. We've crossed that. And I want to commend our president as chair of ECOWAS. He was resolute. He stood firm in insisting that ECOWAS must facilitate a transitional arrangement for a return as expeditiously as possible back to democratic rule. And so with Burkina Faso, even after the second coup d'etat, they accepted the transitional arrangement that was negotiated by the previous military government. And so on Burkina Faso, we are on course. Even where there is a difficulty, which is Mali, they finally accepted a transitional arrangement. Where there is no clarity is Guinea, where the engagement still continue. So Ghana played a role as chair of ECOWAS for the transitional arrangements to allow us back into democratic and civilian rule. And so in that context, the transitional government in Burkina Faso would be engaged because they have accepted that they are a government in transition and on their way out. And there is no indication that they are reneging on that promise. But let me, before probably you go, let me make the emphasis that just as we are engaging in the way we are doing, anybody who is our friend, including Russia, cannot behave in a way that makes us in Ghana to be uncomfortable. It doesn't matter what reasons are behind it. And that's why the Burkina Faso government cannot place itself in a situation in which it acts with other countries that threatens the interests of its neighbors, because those countries from one year to the other can choose to go or to stay with Burkina Faso. But Burkina Faso's neighbors would be with Burkina Faso forever.
Right.
And that is why in the difficult conversation, we need to make the transitional government of Burkina Faso understand that we are your neighbor, and you cannot do anything to us that makes us to feel uncomfortable. But my point is, we engage first with that neighbor before we talk about it anywhere else.
All right, then. I just want to bring in at this point, Mr. Bombande, just hold on for us. Let's hear from James Agalga as well. He is ranking on Parliament's Defence and Interior Committee. Mr. Agalga, of course, earlier this week, I was interacting with you where you raised some concerns about the president's posture in all of this. Now we are doing some damage control, if we can call it that way. What's your impression of what it is that the National Security Minister has been able to achieve, at least a dialogue with the transitional government in Parliament? Are you happy about the development?
Me indicate that my big brother, Honorable Bombande, has said it all. But earlier in the week, when I had the opportunity to interact with the media, one of the calls I made was for the president to immediately dispatch his foreign minister to go to Ouagadougou and meet with the authorities there and to apologize for the president's own reckless remarks when he engaged with the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken. Whichever way you analyze that particular statement our president made, clearly he goofed. I mean, he goofed and created an unnecessary diplomatic row. Look, Ghana has a history. Right from independence, I think our foreign policy direction was one of non-alignment. And our non-alignment, position has served us well. But somehow, the president chose to bastardize Ghana's position as a founding member of the non-aligned movement and gone to peace camp with the West. I have no problem with that. But to go out of the way and criticize the Burkinabe authorities before the U.S. Secretary of State, when you haven't even taken steps to engage with the Burkinabe authorities on the allegations, or if you like, the intel he must have had regarding the involvement of the Wagner group in Burkina Faso, was most unfortunate. You see, and so that was why I made the call that, look, rather than sit in Ghana and be defensive, the president needed to do the needful by dispatching his foreign minister to Ouagadougou. I think the Minister for National Security visit to Ouagadougou is a step in the right direction. When we're debating the budget estimate, right before the minister himself, I made those remarks on the floor of Parliament that they needed to act with speed in order to save the Accra initiative from total collapse. Because in my estimation, first of all, why did the Burkinabe, assuming that what the president said was true regarding the involvement of the Wagner group in that country, what pushed Burkina Faso to bring on board the Wagner group from Russia to help them repel terrorist attacks in their country? It's because help is not forthcoming. One from ECOWAS, two from the AU, and if you like, by extension, the UN. That is why Burkina Faso decided to go in for the Wagner group. So rather than criticize them, we should be asking ourselves, what material support have we offered the people of Burkina Faso? And once again, I raise this point,
Right.
that beyond the sharing of intelligence under the Accra initiative, don't we think the time has come for us to begin to offer Burkina Faso some form of support? Because in the 90s, when Liberia went up in flames, we intervened. How different is this from what is happening in Burkina Faso? Because the other day when we got some briefings, we were told that, look, out of 13 regions, about 7 of them have been taken over by terrorists in Burkina Faso. Do we want to fold our hands, allow the Burkinabés to handle their own matter until a caliphate, an Islamic caliphate, if you like, is established in Ouagadougou? Would that make us any safer? So we think that we must be proactive.
All right.
Beyond the Accra initiative and how well it has served us.
All right.
So Dapaah's visit to Ouagadougou is a step in the right direction. I also agree entirely with my brother, the Honorable Bombande, that after Dapaah's visit, I think our president himself should fly to Ouagadougou and allay the fears of the military authorities in that country that they have a partner in Ghana so far as they are quest to get rid of terrorist elements in their country. I mean, it's concerned.
And I'm grateful. James Agalga is ranking on the Defense and Interior Committee of Parliament. Let me wrap up with you, Honorable Bombande. The way forward, you know the dynamics of this. Will this be the end? The fact that our National Security Minister is currently in Burkina Faso, or there will be a need for some more diplomatic interventions to bring this matter to a long-lasting solution?
There will be a need for more diplomatic engagement. And that political engagement, in my view, must be daily, must be constant. But the Honorable Agalga made a very important point. That engagement should include a clear understanding of our lackadaisical attitude as ECOWAS and the African Union in responding in good time to respond effectively to the challenges that confront us. Let me make a reference to one of our respected elder statesmen, former President John Kufuor. He used to make a statement that Ghana must hit above its weight. And what he meant was that sometimes in Ghana, we underestimate our own value of the diplomatic leverage we carry. Now, our president, not only should he, in following up to repair fully and restore our relationship with Burkina Faso, but he should be speaking to President Buhari and the other leaders of West Africa that our delay every week to collectively respond to the threat of terrorism in West Africa is not going to help any of us. And so he can continue to mobilize that political will to make it possible for us to be in Burkina Faso as early as possible to support that transitional government and the people of Burkina Faso. And keep in mind, when I say support, it's not just go and fight, because sometimes when we are able to deploy, the optics send a very clear message. When terrorists begin to see the presence of ECOWAS troops as an international body of ECOWAS, the signal and the strong messaging is that we cannot continue with the behavior that we started with. Either they retreat and completely fold up, or they know that it is no longer a battle between them and Burkina Faso, but it's a battle with the entire ECOWAS region. But we have a situation in which, and I don't want to go into some of the specific details of international relationships. Whether you like it or not, la francophonie in West Africa deferred to la Côte d'Ivoire. I don't want to be public on this,
right,
but we all know that the leadership from that setup is currently not going down well. Senegal has issues even with, regrettably, at this age and time, about mandate and terms of mandate. So even if you look in the Francophonie setup, there's very little. Right. If you look in the Anglophone setup, Nigeria is not forthcoming. Who is left to carry this burden politically, diplomatically, to ensure that we are mobilized and ready to support Burkina Faso?
Honorable Bombardier, I would want you to stay on with us. There are more developments in the West Africa sub-region that I would equally want to take your thoughts on. And